Good evening, everyone. We are so excited to have you join us for our second professional development session for the latest generation film contest. I'm Angela Starrin, the Senior Director of Advancement at the Lincoln Presidential Foundation. So glad you could make it. Our foundation's mission is to share the story of Abraham Lincoln's life, legacy, and leadership with all people. Our latest generation film contest is inspired by President Lincoln's question to an Indianapolis crowd in 1861. Shall the liberties of this country be preserved to the latest generation? We invite participants ages 14 to 22 to share short historical documentaries that are 5 to 8 minutes long. This year's theme, On This Land, encourages filmmakers to explore their local geography, helping them understand the events and people that have shaped their communities and beyond. In this first year, the contest is open to participants in the Midwest, with plans to expand in the future. Films are due by December 31st, 2024. We'll award cash prizes from $500 to $2,000 in 3 age brackets, and the winning films will premiere at a red carpet event in Chicago in spring 2025. Our professional development sessions aim to help filmmakers to film content. This initiative is funded by the Better Angel Society through the Amy Marjoram Burke Education Fund. Tonight, we're excited to welcome back Liliane Calfee and Laura Rosenberg. Liliane is a documentary filmmaker and film instructor at DePaul University. She runs youth programs with the Chicago Housing Authority, focusing on increasing access to the film industry for marginalized youth. Her award-winning programs pair CHA youth with experienced filmmakers, resulting in short films recognized at prestigious festivals across the U.S. Laura is a veteran educator with 12 years of experience teaching English. She's also served as a curriculum coordinator and coach, and later became a senior editor at 9 to 5 Mac, which has over 30 million readers a month. Now she leads anti-bias education initiatives to combat implicit biases and bigotry. Before we start, please submit your questions in the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. Now, please join me in welcoming Liliane and Laura.
Thanks so much, Angela, and welcome everybody. I see a few names from our session on Tuesday, which is up on YouTube now. We can share it in the chat as well. So those of you who are not here with us on Tuesday can go back and watch it at your leisure. I'm Laura, and I'm going to be kicking us off before I pass it off to my colleague, Lily. And then Angela, if you could give me the sharing abilities, that would be, oh, there we go. That'd be great. Now I have it. So just to kick us off, so as Angela said, this is the latest generation film contest. I do apologize for the couple of you who were here on Tuesday. This is going to be a bit repetitive, but for our new people tonight, here's our agenda. We're going to talk about today making the short or producing the short. And again, as Angela mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will answer them as best as I can while Lily is presenting. So yeah, this is me on the left, Lily on the right. These are the organizations that are sponsoring this contest, the Lincoln Presidential Foundation and the Better Angel Society, which is Ken Burns's nonprofit. And this is just more detail about the latest Gen Film Contest. Also, as an aside, we will have classroom copies of today's presentation as well as Tuesday's presentation available to you. So you can just take it and use it in your classroom and it's kind of ready to go. Because this contest is open to teachers and students in the Midwest, we don't have like individualized standards or benchmarks, but I did pull some from 3 different organizations that you could use if you needed to like convince an administrator to incorporate this into your classroom, or if you needed the SBCEUs. So we have the National Council for the Social Studies Standards and Benchmarks that this presentation hits on. We have the standards and benchmarks from the National Council for Teachers of English. And then lastly, the standards and benchmarks for the National Visual Arts Standards. In addition, as a bonus, and this actually applies whether or not ideally your students would be submitting these 5 to 7 minute documentary shorts for the contest, but even if not, they can still attend, as can you, these filmmaker master classes. They're free. We already have one on the 24th, and you'll see in a minute the link to access it. But we have one coming up on October 15th, and then one again on October 26th with established filmmakers. Each session's about an hour long, and they will also be recorded. So this was the first one we've already had from Florentine Films with Stephanie Jenkins and Akia Thorpe and Clark Burnett. And the YouTube link is there. Again, you will have access to all of these resources. You can go back and watch it if you want to on archival research and short form storytelling. Coming up on October 15th is History from Your Point of View. So acclaimed filmmakers Stacey Robinson and Rita Coburn share their approaches to bringing the past to life. I'm not going to read this obviously word for word, but should you choose to, you and or your students can attend these. And then lastly, on Saturday, I believe it's a Saturday at noon Eastern or 11 Central, is the Twin Cities PBS session with Emmy Award-winning documentary producer and directors. You can learn about storytelling, structure, archival resources, and editing tips and tricks. These are all fabulous resources. And again, they are free for you to attend. Some prompts that are, again, amenable for students' creativity. If you hear that train in the background, I live close to a train track, so I apologize. Just some questions to get students' brains working. Again, this is also from Tuesday's presentation, but who lived on this land before me and what societal changes brought me here? Which specific cultural aspects define where I live? What sacrifices have been made to preserve this land? Why might where I live matter to someone who has never been here? And what contributions has this land made to improve the world around me? Lastly, are there any specific individuals who have made an important contribution to where I live? I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Lily, who's going to go into classroom film projects. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then she will start sharing. You're on mute, Lily.
Welcome, everybody. All right, so this is part 2 of this workshop. So I highly recommend, if you weren't here or if you're catching this on YouTube, look for our first section, because it's really going to explain how you can contextualize documentary storytelling in a classroom and combine history and approach, and also really amazing short film links to get your students really inspired by documentary filmmaking. So first of all, I am looking for a little bit of buy-in from you all, as well as your students. So why do a film project in the classroom? I know that it can seem a little bit daunting, right? You're like, oh, that so many parts to this. What about the equipment? And is it too much to ask of my students? As an educator who has done film projects at all ages from 15 to 24 on iPads to Top Gear, I can tell you that students love it. They love creating media and content. And to combine that with your already prepared curriculum of learning about history and people, it can be a great way to bring that to life, right? And have them more deeply, because they're going to do a lot of research, right? For them to more deeply understand their content, especially as they go back and watch old videos or find old photos. There's going to be a really strong connection there with the material. And then the other thing too is, like, you don't have to be an expert. A lot of what I do with my groups that are, again, ranging from 15 to 24 is I lean on what they already know. So we are in an era where young people are creating content all the time. You're going to have your YouTube vloggers, you're going to have your, people who are putting up Instagram stories and reels, TikTok pretty much every day. So they are native to making video content. So they might actually be teaching you something through this process. And then finally, I find film is by nature very, very collaborative, right? There's a lot of moving parts and everybody has a role. So it really helps to build bonds, right? As people work together and figure out what they're doing, supporting one another. So we have found that to be a great way to create community within our groups. Creating film teams. So I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to propose an idea if you were to do this contest and wanted to figure out a way, well, where do I even start, right? So in part one, I explain how they can get going with coming up with different historical topic ideas for this documentary, and very specifically to the criteria. Something has to be 20 years ago or prior to that. Also, it should be something that truly matters to them, not just something that they're doing for a class project, but something that resonates with them. And they should be thinking about personally in their lives, what have they been impacted by? Or do they have someone in their family, a subject that could really speak deeply on something through their lived experiences, right? Point is, each student should care. And so the idea would be that we begin with everyone coming up, doing the research, and coming up with a pitch where they would stand in front of the classroom and explain the what of their project, the how would they propose putting the film together. I gave you lots of examples of different approaches to how to make the film, and why does it matter, why should we care, right? Very simple, concise pitches. And then the class, the peers have an opportunity to ask questions, get clarification, right? So say you have a classroom of 24 kids, they all are going to pitch. And then you're going to have them vote on however many teams you want to do per a group. So we do one team for 4 or 5 students, somewhere in there. You could do up to 6, really. But really, I think 4 or 5 really allows everybody to feel like they have a place and a role. So you have them all pitch, you have them vote on a slip of paper, their name, and then the 4 to 5, they can't vote on their own pitch. And then the 4 or 5 pitches that they would be most interested in being a part of, what really resonated to them. We make it pretty dramatic when we do this, and I do it every year. We put all the, as we're reading, I do a live vote so people can see the ticks of which films are getting the most votes. And then towards the end, I add ticks to all of them so no one gets no ticks. But it's still accurate, but so that we can share some love with all the students and their efforts. So we get to the ones and that are clearly visible, which ones had the most votes, and then you move on to production with those films. And then you have the slips with their names. And the way that it works, if they vote on 4 films, typically you are able to get each person on a team that they voted for. I'll add one piece though. You'll want to poll your students and find out who are the editors in the group. Filming and coming up with story, all those things are pretty, like you're going to get a lot of people that can do those things or learn it and do it really quickly. But editing, there's a learning curve. And so you want to see, if possible, get an editor on each team, somebody that's comfortable in whether it's iMovie or CapCut, or maybe you even have some students that are, playing in Premiere or Final Cut, some of these other more advanced software. But like, as long as they're feeling you have one person feeling comfortable, you'll be in really good shape. You'll also want to, once the teams are established, you'll also want to go over the main roles in a film team and see which role fits best. Oftentimes, the person who won the pitch will be the director, because this is the person that's going to be guiding the vision of the story. And making sure that their ideas that are in their head are being translated on screen. Obviously, that can be a shared effort. You're probably going to have people with some great ideas that come in on the team that can support it. So it's like they're leading it, but they're also collaborating at the same time. If someone is not good at camera or like uncomfortable with sound, producer is a great role for anyone who's very organizational and can make sure they have all the documents that they need for the film team, that can handle scheduling and just the whole layout of when we're going to do what, where, and how, right? Director of photography. Typically, there's one person just loves camera so you can give them the role of getting all the footage that's needed. Sound person, figuring out how to tackle sound. The sound person can also be potentially the person who collects sound effects if you need it to make the film come alive more, or selecting the music track that they're going to play with the film. And then finally, your editor, right? Your editor is going to take it. The editor is a huge role. They are going to put more work into the film than anyone else. It's a lot of like on your own focus time and putting cuts together, sending it to your team for review and notes, and then getting back in there. Some people absolutely adore editing. I do. I love it. So you just have to find the person who is excited for that position. Steps to making a documentary film, just so that we're like, boop, 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 especially for our teachers who have and educators who have never tried this before. So firstly, your students and your teams will need to develop a story. And so see part 1 of this workshop, and I go through that in depth. Secondly, once they have their idea and it's a very crystallized, clear plan of action, they know what's going to be in their film, the beginning, the middle, and the end. They know how they're going to do it. Are they going to narrate it? Are they just going to have a script? Or do they have subjects that could speak on their topic? So there might be, experts at the library. There might be a family member who was affected by whatever topic they have, right, from the past. So they're going to need to have all of that lined up, which means either you write the script and you polish it and you get it ready to record, or you are lining up your subjects and where you're going to be filming them. Next, you'll either be recording the script, and I'll say this, I say it in the first time and I'll say it now. If you want to simplify this and make your projects much cleaner, you could just suggest that everyone is doing a script narration, and then supporting that script and narration with really strong visuals and B-roll. The reason for that is it is really hard to get good audio if you are making this a class project with iPhones and iPads. If you don't have like the extra technical gear to make sure that you have and really good quality. If you're just using the device's internal recorder, and someone's even 5 feet away and you've got other stuff going on, it's gonna sound terrible. It's gonna immediately separate the project from more polished projects. So if you're using a script, the sound recording in a quiet room using an app just for like voice, recordings is really, really good. It sounds professional. And then you have more focus. There's also not as much, well, we need to schedule our whole team going to this person's house to get these clips, right? Like you can just have it be everyone is looking online for really compelling content, video footage that matches the story. So you've got this part here, and then finding B-roll, archival video and images. I think there is a treasure chest in this presentation, things that took me years to figure out and find, where you can get, and this will also help you potentially with your own curriculum, looking for materials that are audiovisual to support your whatever your lesson plan is, but finding B-roll, quality archival video and images that you don't have to pay for, that you can't get sued for, right? If you use, and that is the next step. And then we edit the film. So you have all your pieces together. You have your narration or your subjects. You have tons of visuals that you're going to use to overlay and create the story. And then you're getting in there and you're editing the film. So to get into that filming section, production tips, and keep in mind that I am sharing this with the idea that you can do it with any equipment available to you. So filming on a mobile device is a great way to reduce all the barriers and have everyone be able to get involved in this, right? This actually might even help you. Like just from a basic level of filming your family videos, right? There's a lot that we don't think about. Most of us open up our camera app and we hit record. And we don't think about all of the many ways that you can really take that little tiny device, right? This little tiny device, and turn it into a professional looking tool. So This video is fantastic for covering all of the basics of what you would need. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but you can even change the settings in your camera to make it look cinematic, shooting at 24 frames per second versus that really high shutter count, the video-y feel that like you would use for sports, for example. So already one setting change makes things look very smooth and it makes it feel way more cinematic. So that's what I use on my phone, and not many people do because it's not the default. Turning on a framing grid allows you to make sure that your horizon lines are straight so you don't have all this crooked footage. It just helps train your eye to have a really clean video framing. Selecting the lens, I'm not gonna go through all of these, but selecting don't zoom. A lot of young people are doing this thing, and actually it reduces the quality immensely because you're just zooming in on pixels versus get closer to your subject. And you're going to retain that same optical quality. Shooting landscapes, even my college students, I just finished a project for my incoming freshman class at DePaul. And they were to mimic the first films ever made. They were to mimic this idea of like no sound, black and white, and then what type of content were they creating, these 1-minute clips of entertaining things. And I got vertical film clips, and I'm like, come on, guys. This isn't, we're not making a reel, we're not making for social media. So you oftentimes have to remind them, you're shooting landscape, right? We're making a film, we're going to be using the real estate of a screen, right? Whether it's a movie theater screen, which is amazing if their film gets played and wins one of the contest awards. We want that to be a horizontal, right? And so lens distance framing, using natural light, sound, hand holding, all of that is included in this great little video that I start all of my mobile users with. Importance of B-roll, explaining what B-roll is. Here's what I've learned doing this multiple times is that and even so, what we do now, we actually do a little bit of editing for the whole class to see before they start filming so that they can conceptualize how this film's going to be made and understand the importance of B-roll and understand we don't want to watch someone talking for 10 minutes, right? We need, or say for this contest, it's 5 to 8 and just watch them talking, right? We need things to engage our viewer and to make them feel what the person is saying. So the sooner they've really got that locked in, the more that they'll have the opportunity to think about what are these visuals we might gather, what might be, and in fact, we're going to talk about this, but having a whole shot list of ideas of B-roll at the get-go is great. But again, like showing them an example of, and like maybe one of the editing videos so they can see what a timeline looks like and how you layer your main footage with these other visuals on top of it, right? So they come in and out. So everything in here has a link so that you don't have to explain it, right? So for example, this is a link here, and it explains everything, and there's even a video to show it. All right. So power of composition, this is huge. This is really about making the footage that they have look, again, so much stronger, so much more intentional with what's in the frame. So this first video is very inspiring, and it's using all of these really well-known films and classic directors and beautiful, beautiful shots. Very much more for inspiration since a lot of these shots are achieved by major teams. And then we go way more basic with just general rules of composition that will help them, again, and you as well, again, with making video content for whichever purpose it could be, not just for this contest. And then also we have all these camera shots and angles and techniques because most people, right, when they're filming, they're using their camera and they're just kind of like going eye level all day, right? Like this is just the natural way that you're going to do this, right? But if you start thinking about creative ways to get your shots and how that impacts the story, you're going to immediately have like a much more dynamic film. So for example, if you want someone to feel more important, you're going to shoot them from down low, right? If you want to get more of a sense of an environment in the story, maybe you go find the top floor of a building and get that really high shot that mimics what a drone or an establishing shot might be. There are just so many ways to get creative footage versus your classic, going like this. And I'm trying to put like all of it right in your hands with these great videos that have been accumulated over many years' time. Anytime you see a star in the presentation, which again, you'll have a link to, there is a resource that you can use immediately in there. So for example, say you want to like have some fun, like and this is again, maybe it's not even part of this contest. It's great for the contest just to get them practicing composition and the power of it. But this might just be it could be for a different project as well. But the idea is you show them what these different things are: establishing, white shot, medium shot, etc., different camera angles and movements. So the videos will cover all of this. And then they go out as teams and they try to hit as many of these as possible. You come back in, everybody uploads it to a Google Drive folder with their team name, and you review them together, and then you see how many each of the teams get. And the thing that's cool about this is you have these different, first they're like trying to get these different shots, movements, composition tools, and then if they can, these are bonus points, can you put those compositional tools together to create a mood, right? Because a lot of this is creating mood that matches what your story is telling. So that is also in the videos about how these different composition tools do create mood. And then they just go out and they just get creative, right? With creating kind of a suspenseful scene, maybe like in a darker hallway, etc. All right. So we also have this exercise as well. So this is more fun that could be used for any project, right? Not necessarily needed for this contest. This, however, if you're producing a short film, you will need a shot list, right? And so the idea is that your film team is very intentional going in their shooting process, whether that again is the subject. If you're going to be interviewing a subject, you can write a list like, I want my subject, I want to be able to connect as closely as we can to the subject as they're talking. So maybe two people in the team are shooting and their camera settings on their phones are set the exact same way. You have one on the side of the camera, and then the other person might be in charge of getting some really interesting dynamic shots. So maybe it's just like what they're doing with their hands. Maybe they're putting their, 0.2 and getting an extreme close-up of their face. So once we get to some more emotional talking, we put some of that in. You just never know what's going to come up in an interview, and you want to be ready with ideas of how you might shoot that. Say you are doing, I'll use the example again of say grandma is going to be talking about the changes in their neighborhood over the last, 50 to 60 years, right? And what does that mean? And what's the significance of that, right? So we've got that conversation, we've got different angles of them talking, and we've got one clean one that stays on them the whole time, and then there's different footage. And then we need to show those examples, right? So having done the research ahead of time, what areas of the neighborhood have changed the most? How can we shoot that dynamically? How can we make sure that we have some wide shots that show the whole area, and then maybe some close-ups of like a landmark or a space or area that is relevant to their past. Like maybe it's an old playground, maybe it's an old bookstore, maybe whatever it might be, right? So having that list ready is really great. Now this isn't intimidating. This is just a template, and it's more for narrative, but it will work in terms of having something that you can customize, make a copy of it and do what you will. But the idea is that these shot times, point of view, close up, right? You can just pick from these. And again, that other document that has a shot list, you'll know what all of these are: over the shoulder, So I don't expect you to know what these abbreviations are, but you will know once you guys watch that video. Stationary versus zooming or panning, right? So you can be thinking about what would best work for this shot, your location for that. Do you need sound or not? Most B-roll, you do not need sound, right? It's just going to be visual overlaying with music in the background or dialogue, and then your shot description. This just helps really, set it up for success in the beginning, so you're not scrambling later on to get the footage that you need. All right. So we have here stable footage, right? So here's the interesting thing. Some of you all may be combining this with like a media class where you have some old DSLR cameras, like a Canon Rebel, maybe some old Nikons. So I'm going to speak to this on two sides. For our folks that do have kind of these older cameras, are like, ooh, let's take advantage of them. They're nice cameras, right? The one thing they don't have, which cell phones actually do, is image stabilization. So if you're trying to use an older model DSLR, digital single lens reflex, these are the cameras, right, that have, you can change lenses, you can do manual functioning. They take really great video because of the high quality of the lens, right, much bigger lens than what these guys do, but they're terrible with image stabilization. So if you're going to be using those types of camera, my recommendation, strong recommendation, is have them be on a tripod the entire time. No shots handheld, because it is so shaky. It is terrible quality. It is hard to watch. It takes some good practice to learn to put the strap on and create tension and really move slowly. Might as well just get it on a tripod, keep the frame, look, the team, the director and the film person, whoever's filming, is looking at the frame, making sure everything looks really clean and good, the light source is in the right place, and you film like that. With your cell phones, there's all sorts of software embedded in it that makes everything look so much smoother. So that helps a lot. The one thing I'll say though is that a lot of beginners like want to move around a lot. Oh, this person's talking. Oh, now this person's talking. And we get what you call the water hose effect. So a great way to minimize that is to also, even on cell phones, even though image stabilization is really solid, just go ahead and lock it in for a lot of the important shots, whether that be, especially be if you have a subject. You are making sure that, and these little, tripod things for phones are super cheap. We've got some examples here. For each film team, you're spending maybe $20 to $25. A lot of them are going to have them anyway. They're going to have those little like gorilla ones that you can like put on, anywhere. You put on a gate or whatever, you can easily connect it. That's all you really need in a lot of these situations. So I highly recommend, leaning in on stable footage. It's going to make the film look so much more polished and professional. Where would you maybe not be on a tripod? When you're having fun with some really creative shots. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, I believe. But yeah, you can find ways to get like what looks like a drone shot or really wide, like pans, etc. That I do have in one of these videos. It might be the composition video. Right, good lighting. Good lighting is so important, even for like setting up this Zoom, right? I want to make sure that the lighting looks great. I don't want to have any harsh lights on my face, what we call hot spots, right? I don't want there to be weird mixings of lights or like big yellow casts, right? So there really are only two options when you want good light, only two. One, if you are going to do artificial light, we need to work with like a ring light that is designed specifically for illuminating you correctly from the front. All light needs to be from the front. Anytime you're using those lights, like ceiling lights, it's giving that like interrogator look, right? Where you have these horrible shadows on the face and your eyes are a little bit darker. It's the worst light you could possibly use. So when our film students go out, it's nixed. You're not using any overhead lights and any classroom lights. You're going to use window lights whenever possible. So right now I have a window here on my right. I have all the lights turned off in the space. So there's no mixing of So outdoor light is actually more blue, indoor light is more yellow. You don't want those mixing, so you stick with one light source when you're using natural light. Other lights get turned off. A window light is so beautiful. So as it gets colder in Chicago or in the Midwest in general, you can use the window light. So you have your filmmaker with their back to the window so that the light is filling in. When I do window light as a exercise, for some reason, half the group has their subject with their back to the window versus the light of the window hitting your subject, right? So make sure that that's clear, and it's a great exercise because then you can fix it before you are actually at go time. And then the distance from the window, sometimes it might be a super bright day, they might need to back up. Or maybe it's a really overcast day and they're going to need to be closer to that window light source. But what we are looking for, right, is just really balanced light on the face. And if you can get it like a little catch light in the eyes, it's like if there's a little light source, you'll see kind of like a little sparkle in their eyes. So natural light, if artificial light, again, make sure it's, the ring lights are designed to be a very flattering and fill everything in beautifully, no shadows. Natural light, you've got window light as an option. Outdoors and the shade is great. So it has to be full shade like an alley or a garage. The only thing is if you are recording a subject outdoors, the noise factor, it increases, right? That's why window light can oftentimes be your best friend. All right, I think that those were the main points. And again, like this video is going to cover everything. It's going to even show you how to do like create light. Like say you have to shoot at night. There's no other way. Like the sun goes down so fast. It's a weekend project where grandma was only available after her Bible study or whatever it might be, right? This will show you how to set up like a mock studio light setting without without expensive equipment. So I'm trying to get you covered in all areas, and just remember two of the worst lights that you want to avoid at all costs. One, artificial overhead light. Two, outdoors on a really bright sunny day. That is creating the same issue with one, people like squinting. Two, you're going to have these huge shadows on the face. So we want to avoid at all costs a bright day outside or overhead lighting. So the art of the interview. This is such good practice, just in general. They are in a position here where they are learning to really listen, right? They have their questions and they've done their research about their topic. And they are remembering that they're not just there to ask the questions, they're there to really listen and think about what their subject is saying, because maybe the subject is going to bring them to a much more interesting place than they even have. That has happened so many times in the documentaries that as you're listening, you're like, wait a minute. This story is so much more personal, more impactful, and more relevant to my story than anything I had thought to even ask about, right? So there's this relationship between, and typically it's the director asking the questions if they are, take someone that feels confident enough to do so, or just, more extroverted. But you have this, it has to be approached in such a way, right, where you're not just going through your list of questions. You also, this is just basic format things. You want to make sure that you ask every subject to state their name and spell it. So we have it. You don't have to go back and ask, like, how do you spell your name again? Or how do you want your title card to show up right on screen when when you show up? And then you're going to ask them to make sure not to when you ask a question to them, you'll want to wait a few seconds before they respond, so that you have some clean footage before and after. So we'll have, you'll ask the question, you'll ask them to wait a few seconds before they respond and to restate the question so that the interviewer isn't in the film. So you could say, can you tell me what was so important about your grandmother's house? And then the subject person will want to start with, my grandmother's house was a really important place, and then continue talking. That makes sense. So, the creating those pauses, and then making sure that typically you don't want your interviewee to be looking directly straight in camera. So the way that almost every interview is done, there are definitely exceptions to the rule, but as you can see in this image, your interviewer is as close to the camera as possible. So your subject is looking just off the camera. They're not looking directly in, and you can tell them, please don't look into the camera. Just you're pretend like you're having a conversation with me right now. We're just going to be, talking to one another. And then that helps to have a really natural feeling interview versus something that sometimes can look a little jarring if they're looking straight into the camera. Again, unless that is the type of documentary you're doing, there's a purpose for that, and it could be for your film. Part 1 will have examples that do that as well. So link to best practices here. This is great for having your students before they go out and film all the steps. I even give you guys a video release waiver. You do need a release waiver for every subject that's going to be on your film, especially if they win and it's being played, and screened in front of a large audience, or if it's going on to live on the internet. You want to make sure that you have that waiver signed by each subject. And then this will just go through this checklist of how to make sure that you have all the technical pieces in play, and then also like how you should be engaging with your subject, right? Remembering to thank them for being with you today. Remembering to have a little bit of fun chatter and banter in the beginning to make them feel more comfortable with some warm-up questions. So we have that as well for you. So many things. I'm gonna close some of these up. I'm gonna do a quick thing here. I'm just making sure there's no questions. Assume that there are remotes available for controlling smartphones while on tripods. Yes, going back to that, there are remotes available for controlling them. Very easy to do as well. And they're super cheap. They're like $5 to $7 to use a remote. If you are a one-person team and you're recording yourself and you don't have anyone else to do it, you can be sitting there and hit record. You can also no, this is for if you're using a DSLR camera, you can actually use your phone sometimes to control the camera, but that would be a different situation. Okay, so for tackling audio, so we've gone through a lot of different elements that's going to elevate the quality of your film, right? Knowing about composition, making sure you get a great interview. Audio is just as important, and it is the Achilles heel of filmmaking. It is the one thing that gets overlooked and not thought about enough. And it will define whether you have a really polished product or one that is hard to watch because it's crackly or the sound interference is distracting. We want to avoid at all costs, right? Like sound that is hard to connect to. It takes you out of the film, it takes you out of the emotion of the piece. That's why, again, if I had to do this, this was my first time as it's teaching this in a class or incorporating this in the classroom, I would just define the parameters and say you are going to be writing a script about a historical topic that related to geography around you. You're going to write a script and you're going to record it, and then you're going to go find your B-roll because you are ensured to have an excellent audio quality for the film. Now, if you don't, if you're not going that route and you really want them to lean in subjects, which is great. I mean, you can make really powerful films with lived experiences, right? Or having an expert talk on a subject. There's two things that might occur in situations. One might be a group interview. Maybe you have maybe you have like 3 brothers, right? 3 brothers that want to talk about, say you are doing it on farming and you've got, grandpa, his son and grandson, and they're all working on this farm, right? And we're talking about what it used to be like, what it's like now, etc. You have this small group interview. There are directional microphones that will help pick up, and they plug in. Let me see if I can easily open this in. So this tiny little thing, right? You can see how it plugs in on the bottom of their phone. in like you can buy different ones that have different types of, you know, because you have USB-C, and you flash the flash something, whatever it's called. But for whatever kind of phone that they have, basically they can input this in. And then if they're outdoors, and here's the other thing people don't think about, right? Say there's a little bit of wind that's blowing, right? If you do that on your cell phone,
Did Lily freeze for people? You could just like say it in the chat. She froze for me. Yeah, she's frozen. Thanks, Abigail. This, yes, this happened on Tuesday too, but I know that she has a second computer set up. So I'm just gonna give it a couple minutes for her to come back. Um, I know she's talking about mini microphones and stuff like that. So in the meantime, does anybody have any questions while she gets her second internet situation pulled together? Second laptop, rather? Okay. I have a question for you guys, if you don't mind answering. So I know Abigail said she was a student and Dale's a teacher. Are the rest of you also educators planning on incorporating this into your classrooms or presenting it to students? Um, a most interesting presentation. Thanks, Robert. Lily's pretty amazing. With her deep knowledge. She didn't say this yet, but I don't think she will say it, but she's in South Korea right now, with her husband and child. He's on a sabbatical and he's actually making a movie while he's out there. So it's 7:4. I'm in Detroit, Metro Detroit. It's 7:45 here. It's 8:45 a.m. like tomorrow there. So that's where she is. And she's back. Hi,
all right, we're back.
we are back. I was just telling them that you were in Korea and that your husband's filming a movie there.
Nice. Yes. And you can see this, I just switched computers and the lighting is completely different now, right? Because I have the window light more directly on the right. So let me go ahead and get back exactly where we're at. Everything queued up for us. We're getting audio.
Beth said, I'm the moderator for the AV club. Any suggestions for a club that meets once a week for getting all of this information out as quickly as possible so they can get started? That's a great question. I think personally what I would do if I was hosting some kind of weekly club with my students, I would share with them, which we will get to you, the classroom copies of these presentations that Lily and I have put together, and have them kind of watch it at their own or do it as a club, like as a group, like on the board or on the smart board or whatever. I would do it, ask them to do it maybe independently, or if you want to make sure that, make sure that they're all watching it, watch it together. And by watch it, I mean like go through the information together. But you can do that like tomorrow and we can get that to you tonight, if that helps.
Yeah, the classroom copy has absolutely everything and it speaks, directly to students, and it will have every link, every element that they need to go through. And remember, there are exercises here as well to get them, prepping and priming. But I think this would be, if I was running a program this fall, I would have this be the center of what we were doing. And it would all be learning all of these skills in context of making these films. Listen, one of our films, we had our program do it off program hours where I sent it to them and I said, we will be mentors to you all through the process. You can send us cuts, we'll give you notes, but you're making this on your own. And we had one of our films get accepted, and these are major cash prizes. There are not many contests that have $500 to $2,000 cash prizes. That is a massive incentive to your students, and can be really helpful, right? Especially, you know, yeah, for a young person that doesn't have that may not have that much of an income source. So I see Laura has already dropped that presentation in the chat. If you're eager to get it right away, you can save it in your browser and your bookmarks, and jump on this. But let's get back to tackling audio. We were talking about directional microphones, and then here's the other piece, right? There may be a portion where you do want to mic your subject, right? Or maybe you want to do vox pop style. So say you want to pull the community on how they feel. Say you live in a rural area and you want to ask people and on the main street, like, how have you experienced our community change over the last
evening and welcome.
For the last, whatever years. A lot of young people will already have this, but it's a little microphone that, again, same thing, plugs into the bottom of your cell phone, and you can just hold it up and have people talk into this little microphone. Super cheap. They might already have them, especially if you got like influencers or people, vloggers that like to do that type of content. And so these are very easy to use and very recommended for anything that is more, again, on the street, like run and gun type of filmmaking. All right, so those are my audio tips. So final production checklist before you go out and shoot. They're going to forget stuff, right? There's so much to think about. There's so many moving pieces when you're filming, that I highly recommend that you just give them one last pep talk before they go out and film. And this was designed specifically for a team using a mobile phone. So you're going to have some very specific instructions, like turning on the grid on the camera, also locking in the light, because phones like to just like constantly try to change and based on whatever light is available. If it gets darker or brighter, etc., it can look really weird. It can do the wrong thing. So you can actually lock the exposure, especially if you don't like what the camera thinks the right exposure is. You can choose the correct exposure and lock it in so it stays that way. So again, this is just the final production checklist that will help them be ready for success. Again, you see the star, there's a document list here that is exactly this, but it's just more in a format where you can print it or however you want to share it. All right, now we got to move to post-production, right? This is where there's a lot of goodies. There's a lot of goodies for you that, again, may not just be for this contest. This is for many other projects where you might need sources. But before we go and find all of that B-roll and awesome archival footage, photos, etc., each team needs to have a very standard organizing system. So this makes and breaks our teams, is if they have from the beginning, every single team is using the exact same nomenclature for putting all their footage, their audio, everything is set. For mobile users, I definitely recommend that everything is in a cloud that they can just save to, whether that's like a Google Images works, Google Cloud folders, like just Google folder. And I think a lot of you will be using Google Classroom, so that's perfect. They can store everything on the drive, Google Drive, and have access to it with a master folder that's the name of their project, and then they're going to create these subfolders from the beginning. This is from our programs, not as much for cell phone media. But you want your original media, production, audio, music, sound effects, graphics, stills, photos, project files, exports. So all of that can be saved. You can even create like a archival video folder as well. And just make sure that they do this from the very beginning, right, before you collect all of this. In terms of editing software, this has been like a doozy over the year, like making sure like we're putting young people on a software platform that's going to best work for them, that's free, that's user friendly. And what I've learned, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, CapCut is it. CapCut is free, it's user friendly. A lot of the young people we make films on like the most professional software, right, that you have to pay for, and then they make their own films on CapCut. iMovie also works, especially if you're on iPhones and you're very comfortable. The thing is, it's so easy and so limited that you start to like notice like all the films have the same like 10 templates. You start to notice that the music that they offer in the app is all this like these cheesy soundtracks that like everybody's using. So there is definitely some limitations to iMovie where CapCut has like way more range. Like for me, CapCut is like so similar to Canva, right? And like the power and ease of creating beautiful content. And they even have some AI tools. DaVinci Resolve is if you have more serious filmmakers in your group that have experience, DaVinci Resolve does have a free version, and you can potentially have even more professional elements to edit your film. WeVideo is for Chromebooks specifically. So if it's like we got to use the Chromebooks, WeVideo is an opportunity to use that. However, you do have to pay for it. So our big vote here is for CapCut. Editing tips. This is a whole other world. So I'm giving you 2 editing tips. I'm not going to play these videos, but there's ways to put your footage together that adds that little extra element of, whoa, that was cool. Like that just looks so cool. You have match cuts and cutting on action. Really good for an AV team to watch these and incorporate these in their footage to make things look really beautifully, seamlessly put together. So this is to help with transitions from one piece of footage to the next. So it's not as jarring. And so it looks really intentional.
Cutting on action is simply when you're
Wants to autoplay for me. All right, so now with the last, we don't have much time here, with the last 5 minutes, here's the great thing. This is divided into 3 categories of stock footage, B-roll, archival, that students can use and find to put and have be their visuals with those narrations. So we have different categories, right? Stock footage is where it's like images and videos. It could be of anything. It could be of a tree blowing in the wind. Maybe you need something that feels a little soft and moody. So this is more, think stock, right? Not as much archival, but can still be used and for some of that more metaphoric content. This has everything. This has everything for the next few slides I'm about to show you. We've got our stock footage, Creative Commons. So this is yours to keep, keep it in a safe place. So you can go back and have all these links to places where you can get all the stock elements that you need, and you can make your film for free, right? Free is good. So this again is more stock elements. We also have Creative Commons, which is a very powerful resource. It's people who have footage that are saying this is free to use for the public. So I went ahead and I did a test here with Creative Commons, and there are 2 main resources that you can use. One is called Openverse, and I wanted to do, I only have 2 minutes, so I don't really have time to do this. But what I want to just show you, if we go to, actually, I'll do it if we have time at the end. I will for sure. I have to show you. Openverse is definitely more straightforward. You open it up, you search, and you'll see on the right here, I put in Harold Washington. I got all these results, and then you can see public domain mark. If you click these first 3, you're going to get everything that you can use in public domain. You may need to credit, like you might have to have like source on the video of where you got it, but you have that available. YouTube, just so quickly here. So go back here, up here. Because I didn't learn this until I learned this. So if we go to youtube.com, right? We go to Harold Washington. We're looking for footage on Harold Washington. You go up here on the right to filters and you find Creative Commons right here, right? And then all the footage that comes up will already be marked Creative Commons. If you go in it, and you can see the CC here, it will tell you what the uses are for it and any specific other instructions you might need to keep in mind. And then archival sources, On that sheet, again, that's linked. You're going to have all Wikimedia archives.org. That's all online. If you have time and students can go to physical locations, there is a professional workshop webinar with Florentine Films where they really go through all these archival that I hadn't even thought about. Like going to like the Harold Washington Library, if it's on Harold Washington, and seeing what those archives are that they have. They might have physical assets as well that you would need to take photos of, or they might have old videos that you might need to digitize, right? So a little more advanced for sure, but something to think about. And then the last thing, and I know we're at time here, this is our last slide, royalty-free music and sound effects. YouTube has a studio. YouTube, anytime you log into YouTube, you can get to the studio and you have all these options to select your genre, your mood, the duration that you need of your film. Sound effects too. You got a picture of a horse on a buggy wagon. Find the sound effect to go in with that image to bring it to life, right? So yeah, so that is it. These are all the resources. Again, I don't feel bad about rushing through them because you can slowly go through this list and have all the links and use them for this project. All right, so we're going to go a couple more minutes here if anybody has any questions.
I want to add, I have a question for Angela, actually, for our participants. Can you clarify, Angela, how they're going to be able to access the documents that Lily has created with all the free resources and things like that?
Well, one thing that we'll send, so I'll download it to YouTube and then I'll email a link to everyone who attended and also those who signed up and didn't attend. So it will be there, but then also we'll put it on our website, but that might take a little longer.
Right,
So-
but not just like the video, not just the YouTube of like the presentation, but the actual documents in Google Docs.
Right, I sent a link. So
Oh, you
for
did? Wonderful.
example, yeah, for the
Okay.
one that we did on Tuesday, I sent a link, you know, of the YouTube and then also the classroom copy and the cards, the slides.
I think it might be helpful if it's possible to link it in the YouTube description so they watch the video and they have the link directly under the
Okay.
video. That could be, so then anyone watching it will have it available.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
not-
a note on that, sorry, everybody. A note on that too is that if you're going to be using the classroom copies, to maybe even make your own copy of the classroom copy in case you want to like edit it to your liking, because any changes that you make would affect anybody else using the classroom copy, if that makes sense.
I think it's set
Right?
for view only, so they
Oh,
need
great.
to make, it forces them to make a copy of it.
Okay, perfect.
Wonderful.
And I'll double check to make sure that we've changed it from editor
Check
to
it.
view only,
Perfect.
so that doesn't happen. School systems or primary oversights being used due to various, yes. Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Bill.
in terms of software being used, again, a lot of this can be done on their own devices. It's gonna be hard to do it on those Chromebooks, that's for sure. And so it could be that they're editing projects directly on their mobile devices. CapCut is for that. All right, any other questions, thoughts? Appreciate the chat box here.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was really so many valuable resources and great guidance. And so thank you both. And thank you all for joining us tonight for our latest generation professional development session on producing the short. And I want to remind you on October 15th, Chicago filmmakers Stacey Robinson and Rita Coburn will present History from Your Point of View. And then we have Twin Cities PBS on October 26th. To register for the events, please check out our website, lincolnpresidential.org. And before you go, we'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to complete our survey. Thanks once again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dale.